Hi, everyone. Welcome to MentorHealth's live webinar on Advanced Webinar on Tax Rules for HSAs. My name is Liz, and I'm going to be your host today. On behalf of the MentorHealth team, I would like to thank you for being part of this event. Today's webinar will be presented by Phil Larson. Phil Larson practices as a health, welfare, and fringe benefit attorney in Minneapolis, Minnesota. As a recognized expert on healthcare and employee wellness topics, Phil is a sought-after speaker for organizations and a frequent presenter at the Advanced Employee Benefit Seminar for the State Bar Association. Phil served as a senior in-house attorney for a major international corporation for more than 17 years before forming his own law firm, Kinley & Larson, LLP. He has also been an adjunct professor at the University of Minnesota Law School. Mr. Larson practices exclusively in benefit law, including the Affordable Care Act, HIPAA privacy and security, wellness, consumer health programs, and general plan compliance. He has experience with regulatory and contract issue ranging from $1 million up to the $1 billion. His firm works with employers, health plans, providers, government organizations, third-party administrators, financial institutions, and entrepreneurs. We are honored to have such a distinguished person such as Phil Larson with us to present this webinar. Ladies and gentlemen, before we start this session, I would like to inform you of the program outlined for this training session. This webinar is for 60-minute duration. First, Phil will take you through today's webinar, highlighting the area that would be covered, and he would then share with you his presentation. I would like to inform you that all participants, once they are part of this teleconference, they have been placed on mute, and it will remain so until the Q&A begins towards the end of this session. This is for the purpose of avoiding any kind of discontinuity and for allowing the presenter to speak clearly so that everyone who is present in this webinar can take maximum benefit. I also request all of you to hold back your question until the Q&A window begins. 10 minutes of time will be allotted for the Q&A, during which your questions will be answered. And if for any reason, ladies and gentlemen, you get logged out of this training session or this teleconference, I request you all to follow the same procedure to join in again. Now that we are all ready to start, I request Phil to take it from here. Phil.
Thank you, Liz. First off, good morning and good afternoon to individuals. I'm here today to talk about some of the tax rules associated with HSAs, or healthcare savings accounts. As Liz mentioned, I'm going to try to get through our materials so we have time for questions and answers at the end. I'm going to be focusing on a pretty important concept as it relates to healthcare today in HSAs, and that these are really seen as one of the most fastest growing healthcare programs out there in the market today. They are an opportunity to allow for some tax savings for people, and they are also being seen as an advantageous offering for employees and providers. People are finding them to be more advantageous, and I'm going to talk about some of those advantages today, as well as the tax rules associated with these programs. So with that said, I'd like to get started and discuss the agenda. First off, I'm going to try to let people understand kind of where HSAs came from, how they came about, a little background on them. I'm also going to talk about their unique eligibility rules, including a concept called the no other coverage rule. So these are unique to HSAs, so I'll spend some time talking about that. I'm also going to talk about the contribution limits to HSAs. This is, in a sense, how much you can contribute to the HSA programs or accounts. And I'm going to talk about what you can use the accounts for, so the eligible distribution. I'm also going to just give a lay of the land as to why people are seeing these programs as advantageous. What are the positives of these programs? And because it can be new for some people, I'm going to try to outline how the HSAs are different from other programs they're probably more familiar with. So examples there would be maybe an individual retirement account, a 401k that your employer may offer, or what's probably more common for people is the FSA, or flexible spending account. Those are those medical accounts people can use. I'm going to talk about how HSAs are different from all those. I'm also going to talk about how federal health reform will impact HSAs. Federal health reform is going by the name of the Affordable Care Act. Some people call it Obamacare. How the Affordable Care Act is impacting HSAs. And I'm going to discuss, in addition to all that, some of the tax forms that are tied to HSAs. And then last but not least, I'll have a few additional points and some additional resources for people to use in case they need to refer back to many of the rules or issues that I'm going to discuss today. So that's the agenda. We've got a lot to cover. First off, I probably wouldn't be an attorney if I didn't give at least one legal disclaimer on the slide. So just a reminder, when providing these materials as informational purposes only, and we should not be considering this legal advice or attorney-client relationship. Okay, so first off, background, a little history on HSAs. HSAs have been around for a long time, not really long, but longer than people think. They were actually created in 2003. So at that time, the Medicare Prescription Drug Improvement and Modernization Act actually created these. And this was the federal law that actually gave us Medicare D, or the prescription drug coverage for Medicare. When that was passed, they actually created this concept of HSAs with that legislation. So the end of 2003 is when it was really born. And it's important to know that it was created by actually creating a new section of the Internal Revenue Code. The section is actually 26 U.S. Code, Section 223, which allows for health savings accounts. And I only say that because I want people to understand that these accounts are really driven. They were created and driven by tax rules. So it is a new concept for many entities that are running these medical programs to think of these programs as really kind of a tax animal. All of the rules that I'm going to be discussing today are basically tax rules associated with HSAs and how they run and operate. But just final point on kind of the history and background of HSAs, what they are. If you really wanted to understand what these things are in real simple terms, I have little kids, and sometimes they like me to talk to them in non-legalese, is the HSA is basically a special bank account that is driven by tax rules. So you're creating, in a sense, your own bank account when you're opening up an HSA. And that bank account is driven by tax rules. So in real simple terms, that's the history and background of HSA. Now I'd like to talk a little bit about kind of who can open one up. HSA eligibility is basically the rules for who can open up an HSA account. And the eligibility, as I mentioned before, is very unique in terms of benefit plan offerings that providers or employers or entities are running. You don't really see these rules in other concepts. So it's kind of new for people, and I want to call them out. But in order to be eligible for an HSA account, you must meet these 4 rules. The first rule is that you cannot be a dependent of someone else. I think people understand what that means, and it's pretty easy to follow. The second rule is that you cannot be enrolled in Medicare. And when I say enrolled, I mean actually enrolled, not eligible to enroll. If you're eligible to enroll, that does not affect your HSA eligibility. But if you're eligible to enroll and enroll in Medicare, then that does affect your HSA eligibility. And the last 2 points on eligibility has to deal with the coverage that you have available to you. The last two rules are basically that you have to be covered under what is called a high deductible health plan, and that has to meet certain federal requirements. And the plans will say if they do, they'll call themselves out as an HSA eligible plan or an HSA high deductible health plan. And then tied to that, you have to meet the fourth eligibility rule, and that's that you cannot be covered under any other non-approved health insurance. So they're trying to basically prevent someone from signing up for an HDHP and then at the same time signing up for a non-high deductible health plan. So you really need to be covered almost exclusively